I love the idea that you have a living material that actually has the qualities of a fossilized tree. So I've never had the privilege of touching or feeling one of the bristlecone pines. I remember the first time looking at your photographs and looking at these positive and negative images of the wood, of the grains in the wood, where they become on one hand totally abstract and on another hand they have almost like this trace. It's as if they've captured time. And I think one of the things that I've enjoyed about all of the different projects that we've worked on with you is that somehow time is the subject. So the photography, which is a process in a way that's about fixing light, becomes a process about fixing time. It's the way materials take on the characteristic over long periods of time that reflects slow growth. So I think the glaciers where you're looking through ice which is perhaps thousands of years old, unchanged, fixed, where you look at an object, you look at the light coming through in the case of the glaciers, the object, or the light bouncing off the wood in the case of the bristlecone pines, the White Mountain project. And somehow one's mind is focused on this, it's focused on this long duration approach. And I think that's where the poetry interfaces with the materiality of the things you're making. Thinking of the Pilbara crater, so I can't remember the age of the Pilbara crater, but it's older, the meteor impact, or the meteor is older than the planet itself. I think there's a deep poetry there. I think with the glaciers, the idea of water being held frozen, stationary, transparent for millennia is extraordinary. The bristlecone pines do something slightly different because they're actually alive. They're alive, they're growing, they're changing, but the speed of that change is so, in a way, compacted, and looking at them, you can feel the contortion. They don't feel like a bonsai, they feel much more like a fossilized tree. And, I love the idea that they were there, they were seedlings when the pyramids were being built. And these trees were already antique in antiquity. I mean, I think there's this extraordinary way that they've seen so many things. Not necessarily so many people, because their remoteness is probably one of the reasons they've survived. But I love the idea of a tree as being witness to change. And if you think what has happened on the planet over the 4,000-year life of some of these trees, they focus thought in a very different way. When you wanted to print them, I mean, they could be printed on a photographic paper, they could be printed, for example, as a silver print that can have some of the magic, the tonal magic that holding a negative to the light has, or looking at a contact print and feeling that the impression or the chemical transformation of silver into tone that allows you to visualize the negative as a positive or as a negative itself. So as the conversation started, it seemed that the process that we've been working on here with the flatbed printers of coating sheets of aluminium with traditional artist gesso, which are a mixture of calcium carbonate, sometimes white pigment and animal glues, were a rather nice subtext for the images themselves. I don't know why we chose alabaster, really. I mean, I think there's a way that alabaster is a fine-grained material. Obviously, it's a stone. But when we started looking at the photographs and transferring the tonal information into depth information, alabaster seemed to be a material that responded to what you were trying to do in the images. The process has become as much part of the dialogue as the photograph. So it's the way that the different images find their forms. And I loved the crossover in a way that was the subject. So the alabaster almost becomes treated like a jelly mold, like a Woodbury type print, where you can fill it with black ink and let the ink soak into the alabaster. So the deeper the surface that's engraved, the darker it becomes, and the lighter keeps the magical white of an alabaster. I think the experimentation that can go on as information is mediated from one form to another and transforms and in a way invites different kinds of solutions. So the alabaster seemed like a poetic reflection or a poetic engagement with the relationship between depth and tone that added another layer to the White Mountain. I think also when you were talking about White Mountain, alabaster is this white stone that treats light in a very particular way. It can be translucent, it can be almost transparent, it can be crystalline, it can be homogeneous. And I think it acts as a foil for the information in the large format. So you're shooting 10:8 negatives, which are then being played with, printed, looked at as a negative, looked at as a positive. I mean, I've really enjoyed watching Edu working with you to try to get the qualities you want, which is a full tonal range, yes, but actually it's holding this silvery grey that has the qualities of the wood itself. So in real life, the wood is a kind of strange silvery grey. So it's not just that you've turned it into a black and white photograph, it's that the photograph has taken on the properties. In a way, the work you were doing with Pilbara Crater is about the surface of the Earth. The work you were doing, the meteors, is about the surface of the meteors in deep space. And the work you were doing with the glaciers is about the interior light. So the surface you kind of fall through. But with the trees, it's almost like the opposite of the glaciers. Everything is happening on the surface, and its stoniness, while being alive, is its poetic potential. There is no doubt these are aesthetic works of art that you're producing, but they're aesthetic works of art where, in a way, the truth that comes from the objective recording of the surface of the trees on the White Mountain becomes the subject. And I think it's looking at that transforms us. And I keep coming back to it. I think they're profoundly poetic works. There's something going on in these images which I still haven't worked out. So, you know, I love the idea that we can keep pushing the material transformations to echo the materiality of a 4,000-year-old piece of living wood. you.